You're listening to Served Up, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful conversations. I'm your host, Bridget Albert, also known as a Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with decades of experience. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry. Hey y'all, it's Bridget here. I had the chance to chat with Laura DePasquale. She is the Senior Vice President of Commercial Operations for Artisanal Wine at Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits, and she's a Master Sommelier. But what really stands out about Laura is her journey. She's built an incredible career through grit, curiosity, and a deep love for wine and people. And she's never stopped learning or lifting others along the way. Laura brings authenticity, heart, and real-world perspective to everything she does. And I know you're going to be inspired by her story and insights today. So sit back, relax, grab yourself your favorite glass of wine, and enjoy this incredibly inspiring episode. Laura, thank you so much for coming on Served Up. I'm really excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Can you tell our listeners what sparked your interest in wine, and when did you realize it could really become a career?
That's a really great question. So I can tell you, I can tell you exactly. So I grew up in a Italian family, and we had wine at the table, cheap, crappy wine at the table. And I thought wine was terrible, right? I didn't like it at all. And then as I became an adult and did my undergraduate and my graduate work in art, I started working in really great restaurants in Manhattan. And I still didn't really care about wine. But I did understand that as a server working in a great restaurant in Manhattan, you needed to know some things about wine, and being able to sell wine at your tables would increase your check, which would increase your tip. Additionally, when I was working, the restaurant that I started working in that got a lot of attention and 3 stars in the New York Times and front cover of the New York Times Magazine and all of that, it was an all California list. So it was the first time I really started to understand California wine. And I thought, wow, this is not terrible. This is actually pretty good. Still didn't care though. Moved to Miami to continue to pursue my painting career. Still working in restaurants because I had to keep the lights on. And a friend of mine came to me at the restaurant. I was working at the restaurant in Miami, James Beard Award winning, all of that stuff. And he said, hey, next weekend, there's this thing in Orlando at Disney where these Master Sommeliers are doing this class. And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds fun. He's like, well, I need you to go with me because you're the only person that I know that knows anything about wine. And I need to cheat off your paper. So I was like, well, I can't go. I'm working, right? Like I'm working in the restaurant. And he's like, well, ask the chef if you can go. And I was like, all right, but he's going to say no. Surprisingly, he said yes. So the next weekend we drive up to Disney, and there's these 3 Master Sommeliers going to do the level 1 intro class. And we didn't even have a seat in the class, right? Like you couldn't even get in. We just showed up and we're like, we're here. Can we take your class? And I have to admit, the night before we went to like some Pearl Jam cover band thing till like 2 a.m. Like we were so not serious.
I love it.
At Disney, right? And I'm sitting in this class and I'm watching these 3 people talk about wine in a way that I had never heard before. And it was this absolute epiphany. But more than that, it was a collision in my brain and in my soul of everything I loved. It was travel. It was history. It was farming. It was Epicurean and gastronomy. It was family stories and lore and generations and romance And it just all collided in a glass of wine. And I was like, I'm going to be a master som. And so I passed the class and I came back to the restaurant and I was like, I'm going to be master sommelier, having no idea how hard it would be. But I was just like, I'm going to do this. And the chef owner was like, yeah, great. And now you're the sommelier, right? So that he made me the sommelier. And so then I was really immersed in the wine world. And that's kind of what did it. So that's 26 years ago.
Wow, it's really amazing. And such an ambitious thought. Aren't you glad you didn't know what you know now?
Yes. It was one of those things that going through the program, I had already left the restaurant business and was now on the business side of it, working as a supplier for an Italian wine importer. And once I stepped on the business side of it, I was like, whoa, where has this been? And that's when I really saw the career path. But it did so many things for me besides achieving the degree of becoming a master sommelier. It really instilled a level of confidence in me. It really made me understand and not be afraid of who I am as a person. I'm super competitive, but I'm not athletic. So there was no place ever for that competitive drive to go, right? Because I was really uncoordinated. I still am, right? And it made me not afraid of those things. It helped me find my voice as a leader, and it also helped me see that there weren't enough women in the business, especially on the business side. And once I achieved the degree, it was an absolute promise to myself, promise to whoever would listen to me, that I wanted to break that glass ceiling. I wanted to carve a path for women in the industry, and really bring more diversity into our industry.
Yeah. And you really have done that. And you've done a great job of that. And, I'm someone that, I'm not so much on the wine side. I am learning a little bit, but somebody that definitely looks up to you in your journey. And so you opened so many doors for so many, and especially early on, like you said, breaking those ceilings. And with that said, did you have any pivotal mentors along the way?
I sure did. My first boss in my first job outside of restaurants, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 months into my job, and I really knew nothing, right? Like, I mean, I was just putting samples in my bag and taking them out, and I was the only woman working as an Italian wine specialist, and it was all men. They were all from Italy. I'm not from Italy. My dad was from Italy. I would go to markets in Florida like Tampa or St. Pete or Jacksonville, and I would be meeting with an Italian owner of a restaurant or a shop or both. And they would be like, you really do know something about wine. And I'd be like, kind of taken aback by that comment, right? And they're like, well, we heard you didn't know anything because you're not from Italy. And I was like, wow, I'm going to swear now.
You can swear.
Bitchy little other Italians, right? Are like, smack talking me, and they don't even know me, but they knew me a little because they had called on me, right, when I was a sommelier. So I was like, that happened. So my first boss, I remember going to him and saying, listen, I love this and I see a career here for me. I said, but I don't know how I'm going to advance because I'm not going to a golf course. I don't golf, right? I'm not hanging at the bar, until 10 o'clock at night drinking. I don't like drinking, right? I'm not going to do any of those things. Plus, y'all don't want me there anyway, I said, how am I going to ever get ahead? And he looked at me and he said to me, he goes, I really don't know what to tell you, but I'm sure you'll figure it out. And I was just like, wow, that is so not an answer. He said, but I will tell you this. He goes, you're really good. And somebody is going to come after you within a year. And they're going to offer you a big job with a big salary increase. And I want you to make me a promise that when that happens, you will come to me first and let us counter it. And I said, yeah, okay, whatever, right? Sure enough, a year later, big offer, good offer. Not only a good offer in terms of financial remuneration, but a good offer in terms of what the job was, right? Like the wines I would be working with and all that. And I'm still I'm not a master som yet. I'm still pursuing. I'm an advanced som and I'm at the master level. But whether or not you get through, I mean, it's only a 5% pass rate. So I still had a lot of work to do. Sure enough, it happened. And so I did what I promised I would do. And I said, hey, this happened. Here's the offer. Here's the company. And he said, okay, let me make a phone call. So he calls corporate headquarters in New York. And the senior vice president of sales calls me maybe an hour later. And he said, I think you need to come up to New York and let's have a chat. And I was like, okay, when? He's like, tomorrow. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
I'm like, okay. So, I fly up to New York. There's a guy with my name waiting for me at the airport. I'm in a limo, like all firsts for me, total first, right? Go to the corporate headquarters, sit down with him. I mean, I had met him, but I didn't have a relationship with him. And he pitches a bunch of ideas to me, right? Having to do with national accounts and this and that and things I wasn't really interested in. Mm-hmm. And he was like, well, what do you want to do? And I said, listen, we're moving from being an Italian only company to French wines and Spanish wines and now a German wine. And we need somebody that isn't Italian to really head up this fine wine team of people around the country. And I want to be that person. And he said, okay, let's go to lunch. We go to lunch, come back. And he goes, we're going upstairs, which means we're meeting with the owner. Right? Mm-hmm. We meet with the owner and we're sitting at this table. And I realize that he's not going to advocate for me, right? He's not going to not advocate for me, but he's going to sit back and wait and watch.
Yeah.
It's something I learned from him. So I'm like, okay, I got to sell this myself. So I don't even know what I said. And it felt like I talked for 10 minutes straight without taking a breath. But at the end of it, I ended my incredible pitch with, I'm going to stop talking now, right? I remember that. And the owner of the company, who was a small man, huge personality, great vision, incredible orator, but diminutive in size, right? So he stands up and he bangs the table and he looks and he points at me. He goes, young lady, you're absolutely right. He points at Dennis, his name was. Dennis, you make this happen. I got to go, right?
Oh my gosh, just like that.
Just like that, right?
Wow.
So we go downstairs. Dennis is like, okay, give me 24 hours. I'll come back to you with an offer and you'll be reporting to me. So I reported to him for the next 7 years, the remaining 7 years that I was at that company, and was promoted 2 more times after that. And that man taught me so much about myself, about building relationships, about trust, about vulnerability, about managing people up, managing people, peers, managing your teams. He taught me so much. And I used to say he made my career, but people have told me not to say that anymore. Because you make your career, right? Mm-hmm. But you need really great people along the way. And he for sure was that person for me.
That's amazing. Do you still stay in contact today?
He passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So he passed away in 2018.
Wow.
He retired about a year after I left the company. And then unfortunately, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's pretty quickly after that and didn't last that much longer.
Wow.
Yeah. But I think about him often and I'm still in touch with people from that company. In fact, one of my very best friends in the whole world still works for that company. And we always share Dennis stories when we're together. In fact, I was just with him in New York and we shared a Dennis-ism. There were Dennis-isms, just phrases that he would say that was like, I hear Dennis Delaney in my head.
I love that. And he's definitely still with you then and helps,
100%.
Shape and has shaped a bit of who you are. But I love that somebody said to you, stop saying that you owe everything to that one person, because especially as females, I do feel like sometimes it's hard to take that ownership of the work that we've done, the work that we've put in, those feet that we put forward. And so I do think that's some excellent advice that was given to you as well. And I think that is good for our listeners to hear.
I think along the way, I had such a strong relationship with this man that became personal on both our sides. I don't know that Well, I certainly never sought out another relationship that was that mentor-mentee-ish. However, there are things that I've taken from people along the way, right, that were either in similar positions as me, different positions, higher positions, a lot of entrepreneurs, because a lot of what I've done within the business is really entrepreneurial. I like to think of it as intrapreneurial, right? Doing something new within a company. It's certainly one of my strengths as a leader is to be able to see a different path and to see a new path to create a revenue stream or a new area of business or a different way of doing it. And so I don't know if it's that I've been stubborn about it, but it's like little pieces, right, of things that I've taken from different people. We just did the Women's Leadership Council Symposium for WSWA that I'm the chairperson of, and our keynote speakers were two retired 3-star generals.
Wow.
Yeah. One was Marines and the other was Air Force. And just, it made it 6 months, or no, it's not 6 months, maybe 4 months since that. I still hear them, right? And the conversations that we had, I mean, we only had them for 90 minutes, could have been the whole day. Their stories, their leadership lessons, and military is not something that I would gravitate towards, right? But just how they handled really working as women and advocating for female service personnel, basic things like protective equipment that wasn't a men's small, that was actually built for a woman's body, right?
Right.
Things you would assume existed that didn't. Privacy in the shower, right?
Wow.
When they were out in the field, wherever it might have been, right? Because both of these women were in Afghanistan and Iraq. So just privacy in the shower, and understanding and advocating for not all women take showers at the same time, right? So like the 2 hours of privacy for women, what do we do about the women that are on night patrol that need to shower in the morning, right? What do we do for them? And the way they handled it, not so much the task or the problem or the solution to the problem, but how they handled it and how they navigated it. So, along the way, I think, especially as you get to these higher positions in your career and you find yourself more as the mentor rather than the mentee, to be able to grab this from this person and that from that person is really key and important. Yeah. And you have to be open to it.
You've been in the industry for quite some time, and it sounds like you were an art student. That's what you started. Can I ask, what were you studying? Like, why art? Is there something there we should know about? Because that's fascinating to me.
So my graduate degree, I have an MFA in painting. Yeah. And I, was trying to be a famous artist, which, didn't happen. I think getting any humanities degree makes you a big thinker. And I think being an artist, I don't know who quoted it, but there's a quote that basically says, artists are observers and scientists are creators, right? It's not what you really think about when you think about artists. You think they're creators, right? But really what you are is an observer. And you're observing something that inspires you and then expressing that observation through your medium, right? Whether it's drawing, painting, music, dance, whatever it is. And I think having that background has really served me well in this career. I really pursued it for a while. I had a lot of critical success, but no financial success. And then I just really got to the place in my life where it's like, I want health insurance. I want to not be behind on my rent every month. Right. I don't want to have to choose between groceries or paint. Right?
Yes.
It just got tough. I think it's extraordinary, and I have so much respect and admiration and a little bit of envy, to be honest, for people that I know from that time that stuck with it.
Yeah. I think it's super cool that you have that background. My mother's an artist, and my mother's from Italy, and so we do share something in common there. But
we do.
Yeah, and And I do think that for creative minds that you do see things in such a special, extraordinary way. And a lot of times things that maybe other people would miss, right? Because you said it yourself, you almost see like all the different avenues, right? All the different adventures, and you can really create that magic with your mind and create, something that hasn't ever been done before. And because you're an artist, maybe you're not afraid to take that chance and to be bold as well.
I think being bold is something women struggle with, right? Because I think that in a lot of ways, I was really appreciative of the fact that I was raised by a mother that was very traditional in a lot of respects and then was forced into the workplace, not by choice, but by our family dissolving. And she would say to me, of all my children, you get the one that could be anything you want to be. You can be anything you want to be. You can be anything, which was amazing that she said that. But at the same time, she was like, you need to learn how to cook so you can cook for your husband when you come home from work, right? Yeah. You're not very good at cleaning. You need to learn how to clean. And I was like, I'm going to hire a housekeeper the first minute I can, which I did, right?
Yes.
Because I hate cleaning. And so I think that, we get these mixed messages. And I don't think that's changed, right? I think for sure women of a certain age really got that mixed message. But I know younger women get the same message, maybe in a different way. And it's something that I believe inhibits women from being bold, right? We're afraid of being too loud or being too aggressive or being difficult, right? Code word for bitch.
It's true.
It's true. And I think we also get afraid of risk taking. And because I struggled so much when I was younger, financially, and because I came from the hospitality industry when it was very brutal, right? When, if you didn't work your fifth double that week, you weren't a team player.
Yeah, same.
Right? Same. Where the chefs would throw the food, right, back at the line if they weren't perfect.
Yes.
Where the front of the house was looked upon with such disdain because we made so much more money than the back of the house. But meanwhile, the poor line cooks are making, $7 an hour, $10 an hour,
right, for
18-hour days. Oh, by the way, once you're finished with like the cooking and everything, you got to clean, right? Within an inch of your life. I mean, talk about brutal. I think that we're taught not to be risk takers, but I think when you come from nothing, right, you have nothing to lose, which is kind of how I've always looked at it, right? Like, I have nothing to lose.
Yeah, that's so true. And eventually, your career path, took you to Southern Glazers where you are today. Can you talk about that and how did that happen?
So I've been with Southern Glazers for just over 10 years. I can't believe how fast it went. I was speaking to my hiring manager, which is John Wittig, right, who's the COO now. But at the time, he was the EVP GM of Florida. So when I was with the importer, eventually I became vice president of fine wine. So I had a seat at the executive table. I had an extraordinary benefit. The company was transitioning from a family member to a family member, so from father to son. And during that transition is when I got the seat at the executive table. They brought in an executive coach for a year and a half. So we had a year and a half of executive coaching as a team and one-on-one. So for me, it was like getting an MBA. It was really so valuable. I left that company and I really thought I would never leave, but I left that company because I really got an extraordinary offer to be an equity partner in distribution, the mid-sized distributor selling fine wine. So I was really going to be working with the wines of the world that I absolutely loved. And the chance to take over a failing company and do a turnaround. And when I looked at the opportunity, it wasn't just about equity, which I would never get at the importer because they were a family-held company, but it was also the opportunity to be the one, right? To be the person in charge to see if I could really run a company. And I knew I would never get that opportunity at the company I was at. So I said yes. I took the job. I did the turnaround. It was dramatic. I thought distribution was insane. The first 30 days when I sat in that chair, I was literally physically breathless. I couldn't believe the pace of distribution. Wow. I literally had to catch my breath. But I ran the company in all facets, right? Everything from the trucks and the drivers and the night warehouse through the commercial sales and all the suppliers. And I did a complete and total turnaround on that company. Along the way, and this was in Florida. This was specifically to Florida. Then I was running 2 other states in addition as this company acquired 2 more distributors. So I was running 3 states. I absolutely loved distribution. And once I got it, I was like, I'm never going back to supply ever again, right? I love distribution. I love the pace. I love the adrenaline. I love the winner today, loser tomorrow, right? Mentality. I just loved it. The company was owned by private equity. There was a very unusual moment where 2 private equity companies were coming together to form a new company, and they offered buyouts, and I took it because I knew that it wasn't going to be what I had been doing. And I just didn't like the whole financial piece in the background. And because I was an equity shareholder, I knew what it was. So I left, and it was big news in Florida. At the time, John Wittig was the EVP GM of Florida, and we knew each other because I had been calling on him when he was in Chicago and when he was in Las Vegas. So we had a relationship. We knew each other. So he's one of the first people that called me when he heard that I wasn't working. And he called me into his office and he said, let's meet. And I said, great. So we met, and he laid out a bunch of different scenarios and a bunch of different opportunities. And he said, so what do you think? And I'm like, I don't want to do any of that. And he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I said, John, I have said no to so many things over the past 13 years that I want to say yes to a bunch of things. I want to take a real vacation, and then I'll see what I want to do. And he's like, that's awesome. I don't blame you, but I know you. And in 6 months, 6 weeks, you're going to want to kill yourself. And I was like, yeah, you might be right. And he's like, well, how about this? How about in 30 days, we get together and we just have a drink and see where you are? And I was like, sounds great. So literally like a month later, we meet at the Ritz-Carlton in Fort Lauderdale over a glass of wine. And he's like, so what's going on? I'm like, well, I just came back from Italy and blah, 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 blah. He goes, so what do you want to do? And I handed him a business plan. And I said, this is what I'm going to do. And he said, take me through it. So I took him through the business plan. And he said, what do you want to do with this? I said, I want Southern to take it. And he said, why? And I said, because I can scale it faster with no risk, personal risk, than I'll ever be able to do on my own. But I want you to let me know I already have financing secured to do this. And it was to set up this artisanal boutique wine division that Southern talked about being in, but wasn't in. And so he goes, I want this. And I said, good. So we negotiated and went back and forth for about 6-7 months. I was in a non-compete, so that was just fine. I came into Southern as the fake director of education in August of 2015 because I was still in the non-compete throughout that year. So nobody knew that I was going to do this other thing once the handcuffs came off January 1st. And because I'm a Master Somm, it made sense. Director of education. So everyone's like, wow, Laura's doing education. Huh? Okay. But she didn't like doing education. I'm like, I like doing it once in a while, but not full time. And so January 1st, I started Domain and Estates Project, and the rest is history.
That's absolutely incredible. Really incredible. And I love that, you were so thoughtful about it, right? Like you put this plan together, you knew what your capabilities were and how you could do it. And it happened, and you're incredibly successful.
It was terrifying in the beginning, right? So once the handcuffs came off, right? So now it's January of 2016. I have this blank canvas, right? And I have this runway of not having to make money for a little while, right? But I also have to convince and do what I said I was going to do, which was bring these suppliers that wouldn't normally consider Southern because we were too big, we were too focused on spirits, all these things, but these fine boutique and rare wine suppliers to Southern and convince them to come. And it was like, oh, what if I can't do this? Right? Like, what if they say no, So it was thrilling and terrifying at the same time, because it was this blank canvas to curate and create, but it was also this like huge opportunity for failure, But, one by one, they said yes, and we started, and it happened.
So amazing. What's been the most rewarding part of your career so far, Laura?
I would say a few things. Doing this for sure is the best thing I've done in my career. Now that I'm definitely in the back half of my career, more than half, it's finding those younger people that are as passionate and in love with the world of wine as I am, and showing them that there is a career path in it, that there is opportunity here, that just being a wine nerd isn't just being a wine nerd, right? That it can provide a really stable and wonderful living for your family, and mentoring and seeing them grow. The other part of it that is extraordinarily rewarding is wineries are struggling, right? All over the world. And it's not the stuff about no one's drinking wine. That's actually not true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the world of rare and fine wine that I'm in, our business is actually quite strong. And it's actually growing. People are drinking less, but they're drinking better. But the cost of doing business and the obstacles of doing business for these generational families, right? Whether they're in California and they're dealing with inheritance laws or fire insurance requirements that make doing business so hard in California, or they're the fifth generation in Italy, let's say, and this winery finally started to make money and provide a nice living for this current generation. But this current generation now has 3 adult children that are starting families. You can't expand the winery anymore because of laws that restrict you, right, in terms of growing areas. How does that same winery support 4 families now, right? So finding a way and a path to keep those really important families and farms, right, that farm correctly, that are good for the environment, that are really making extraordinary wines, that have generations of history. How do we keep them in business?
Right, right.
And so that part's is incredibly rewarding. It really is.
Yeah. And out of, you've had the chance to have wine take you around the world, right?
Yeah.
You really have seen a lot. Do you have some favorites, not brands, but just some favorite areas maybe that you've seen or have explored in the world that you can recommend to our listeners? Like, you should absolutely visit this spot.
Yeah. So Italy's my wheelhouse, right? Being from an Italian father, and I speak Italian, and I've probably been to Italy 100+ times. To go to Tuscany is a lifelong dream for most people, and well worth it, right? The wines are extraordinary. The foods are amazing. Florence and Siena and Pisa are spectacular places. Piedmont is the pinnacle of Italian wine for Barolo and Barbaresco, and the town of Alba is super cute, and there's great outlet shopping up in Piedmont as well, like on your way from Milan Airport, on your way into Alba, you can stop at Serravalle Scrivia, and there's the Prada outlet and the Dolce Gabbana outlet, right? And the Replay Jeans outlet, which is always a must. But there's other parts of Italy, too, that are less touristed and less discovered. So my dad was from Abruzzo, and I just started visiting Abruzzo the last 5-6 years. And you want to talk about a place that has it all? You're on the coast for the Adriatic Sea. You've got the Gran Sasso Mountains, right? So you have skiing and hiking and biking as well. You have great wine. You have incredible gastronomy. It's not as touristic, right, as Tuscany is. And it's an hour and a half drive from Rome, just straight across, right? So that's an area that I'm really, really high on. I hadn't been to Alsace in France in a really long time, and I was there over Valentine's Day in February. And with the way the world is right now, and there's so much anxiety and so much hatred and so much ill will, Alsace is this homogenization of French culture, German culture, and a real love of America, of the United States.
That's amazing. That's on my list of places to go. I have not been.
You have to go to the town of Riquier. And if you're a history buff, this is where the U.S. really started freeing France and capturing the Nazis. And so in the town of Riquier, not only is it like picturesque and super cute, but there's this history tour, and you don't even have to like go with a guide. Like there's literally pictures and markings of these were the shell casings, and this is where the bombs were, and here's the walkway that the prisoners were marched down. I mean, it's incredible, really, really incredible. And so that area is really high on my list. I haven't been to Austria in a while, so I'm going this year. And I found that in Vienna as well, this real sophistication of culture between art and music. And whenever I travel, I mean, the only way that I've survived hard traveling for this many years is to make sure that it's not just all business and it's not just in and out, right? It's, can I go to a museum, right?
Yes.
Can I see an art exhibition? Can I go to a concert? I rent an Airbnb rather than staying at the hotel so I can go to the market, right? Like I love a supermarket or any kind of market in whatever city I'm in.
Yes.
And it's trying to experience more than just going there on business. Because I think if you just go there on business and you don't dig in a little bit, you're missing it.
Yeah, you're totally missing it. But I also think that it just makes you better at what you do because you can understand the culture and the people. And I have to say, I too loved going to the supermarkets. My husband drives him crazy. I'm like, I need to go. That's where I get all my souvenirs.
Yeah.
I'm going to come home with a suitcase of cheese and noodles. I don't know, but but it is important because then you can really speak to what you're selling, right?
100%. And I think, one of the mistakes people make that are in our business, especially when they're dealing with fine wine, is they want to like give, and even sommeliers do this, right? They want to give you this like, this is the blend, and this is how many months, and these are the grapes, and this is how many months it's spent in oak, and the winemaker. It's like, how about your authentic experience, right? How about the first time I tasted this wine was in Napa Valley, in Alsace, or it was in a sales meeting and the winemaker came in, and this is how it made me feel, right? Or this is what it made me think about, right? Whether it's something political or something emotional, right? Or something minuscule, but it's your genuine experience, right? It's your authenticity. And authenticity doesn't have to be, it's, a blend of 20% Cabernet Sauvignon and 15% Merlot and the rest is Cabernet Franc. It doesn't have to be that, it's your experience. Because the world of fine and rare wine is a world that you will never learn everything, ever, right? It is always about continuing to learn. And if you love to learn and you're curious, this is the world for you. But it's also about being genuine, because the wines that we're dealing with are genuinely representing a place and a family or a point of view. But in general, it's a family. And you're not that family, right? You're not the one growing the grapes. You're not the one picking the grapes. You're not the one making the wine. You're the one that's selling the wine and telling the story. So yes, knowing the story and the history of the winery is of course important. And having those facts, the blend, the oak, whatever, if someone asks, is good to know. But what's your experience?
Yeah. Right? Yeah. I think that's what gives you so much credibility as well and creates that safe space because you can talk beyond the bottle. which people want to hear that story. They want to know, I think especially today, people are buying quality. They want to know, what they're buying is true and came from a family. The family's name. You've had the experience, but then you can also paint the picture of the region and the joys and the fun, or some maybe the stresses that you had in that area to really to pull at, someone's memory when they go to sell it to somebody like, hey, and I talked to so-and-so and they've been there and they said this about the place. Doesn't it sound wonderful? And when you're taking a sip of this, it should transform you like right to that spot, right?
100%. And I think too, one of the reasons why, at least in the fine and rare wine world, people are really gravitating towards imports is because people long to go somewhere. They want to travel. They want to see. Or they've been there, right? And your sense of smell really excites or ignites your memory, right? So if you've been to Tuscany and you drank Chianti Classico, for example, right? And then you come home and 3 years later, somebody pours you a glass or you order a bottle of Chianti Classico, you're automatically going to start remembering that trip you took, and think, oh yeah, I remember I wore that really cute dress and then remember they lost my luggage, right? And whatever the story is. But, for most people, travel is aspirational. And I feel like not only do we represent great wines and the greatest wines in the world, but we also represent aspiration and we represent discovery, right?
Yeah.
So there's times too where a newer salesperson will call me or they'll text me or they're not showing certain wines from a certain country. And I'll be like, okay, what's going on? Why are you not showing wines in Spain? Like you're not selling any Spanish wine in your territory. Why? And I'll often hear, well, Spanish wines don't sell in my territory. And then I'll be like, well, I'm looking at that wine list and they've got some Spanish wines. And I'm looking at that wine list and they've got some Spanish wines. So what's the problem? And it'll always come down to, well, I don't feel that comfortable selling Spanish wines, right? I don't really feel that well versed in the topic. And I'm like, what about walking in with a Spanish wine and not knowing as much as your buyer, right? What about saying, hey, I'm going to bring some Spanish wines in. I want to get your opinion on them. Let's discover them together, right?
Oh, such good advice.
Right? Like, let's open an Albarino. Let's open a Rioja. Let's open, a wine from Penedès or a Cava or something. Let's see what we think, right? And then you've got that shared experience with your customer and with your guests. Same for sommeliers, right? Like a sommelier is not there to tell you what to do. The sommelier is there to listen to you, right? To hear what you're saying and to find a wine for you or a cocktail, right, for you that is going to heighten your experience, right? And not just because it's alcohol, right?
Right,
but to elevate your experience, that, wow, I tried this wine because the sommelier recommended it. I need to take a picture of the bottle because I want to try to find it. Or, the mixologist paired this incredible Fino sherry with this, course I was having. And I've never had sherry before. It was something my grandmother drank. And so I think that that's what a good sommelier, a good wine store clerk, and a good distributor or salesperson does, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. And it goes on both sides, right? For wine and for spirits, like you said.
100%.
Laura, what do you hope your legacy to be in wine?
Oh, I hope my legacy is that I was able to help wineries find an easier path to the consumer, to the end user. And I hope that I've created a path for diversity, right? For leaders that are diverse, not only in gender or race or ethnicity, but in thought. So that we really have a new generation or a next generation of thoughtful people. And when I mean thoughtful, I mean people who really think and think out of the box. And I hope that I have provided a pathway for younger people that are entering the business to see that there is an incredible career that will take you around the world if you wanted to.
Yeah. And it has for you. You've proven that, so thank you. Thank you for all that you do, for the world of wine and for women in general, and really creating that space for us all. It's pretty incredible. And I really enjoyed hearing your story. I want to invite you back on Served Up if you're up for it.
Oh,
I
wow,
do think we need to do a part 2 with you at some point, because you're just a very interesting guest. And with that, I want to wish you just some great health, Laura, and a lot of peace. And thank you so much for spending time with me today on Served Up. You've been incredible.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it, and I'd be honored to come back. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of our future Served Up episodes. Cheers.